John Carpenter's The Fog.
Welcome back to Hogtown Haunts, where we talk about horror movies. Usually older movies, but not always. Today's topic is The Fog. We'll get into the initial reaction John Carpenter had when he saw his first cut, and we'll touch on the who's who of this iconic film. I want to thank all you early viewers for giving me a chance. From the first episode to this, the third episode, the channel is slowly finding its feet. The Fog is one of those prototypical horror movies that set the bar for just about every horror movie after it. But first, the trailer.
This is KB Antonio Bay. Stevie Wayne here, and let me be the first to wish Antonio Bay a happy birthday. We're 100 years old today, and keep a watch out for that fog bank heading in from the east.
100 years ago, between midnight and 1, something unknown came out of the fog. Now it has returned.
Oh, Jesus.
100 years ago, between midnight and 1, something unnatural came out of the fog. Now it has returned. 100 years ago, between midnight and 1, something evil came out of the fog. Now it has returned.
Who's there?
The Fog.
Antonio Bay has a curse on it. We're all cursed.
There's no water getting here, but something awful cold, Pete.
I think I'll go to Vancouver now.
Where's the fog now?
Well, it should be right outside my door now.
Oh, there's something different about this fog. Dan, stay away from the door! Someone listen to me!
Get inside and lock your doors. Close your windows. There's something in the fog. Stay away from the fog. From the creator of Halloween, the ultimate experience in terror and suspense. John Carpenter's The Fog, starring Adrienne Barbeau, Jamie Lee Curtis, John Houseman, Janet Leigh as Kathy Williams, and Hal Holbrook as Father Malone. The Fog. What you can't see won't hurt you. It will kill you. Between midnight and 1, it will find you.
The Fog is synonymous with the term slow burn, building as it goes. It has the patience to let the ambiance and characters carry the weight. A success from the beginning, The Fog somehow still manages to be an underappreciated gem as well. Starring horror icons Jamie Lee Curtis, Adrienne Barbeau, Janet Leigh, Tom Atkins, and Hal Holbrook, this is more than a gem, it's a classic. Perhaps due to the recent appreciation ghost stories have had, The Fog has enjoyed a resurgence. Also, in what could be an example of how physical media still matters, much of the current interest in The Fog comes from collector's editions of the movie, in 2013 and again in 2022. Both editions were celebrated by the fans. Sidetrack, another perk of physical media is not worrying that one of your favorite movies won't be headed to the vault, or disappear due to digital rights. I only mention this because a lot of these older horror movies just seem to float around all the various streaming services. Genre films have really benefited from physical collector's editions. But I digress. Carpenter had come up with the idea in England, while promoting his film Assault on Precinct 13. After a confluence of events, Carpenter drew inspiration from a few things. First was a visit to Stonehenge, just as a fog was rolling in. And second was a movie he'd seen about monsters in the clouds, the Trollenberg Terror. With that, The Fog began its journey towards existing. Also, I'm going to need to add that movie to my watch list. It sounds a little like The Mist. By all accounts, The filming for The Fog was uneventful. No fights that we know of, and no production issues that sometimes pop up. It wasn't until they hit the editing room that red flags started waving. Carpenter has noted that his first cut of the film was bad. Really bad, according to him. So he did what directors do. Go out and direct. Famously, the whole opening shot at the campfire was added for context. And it's hard to believe that the movie ever existed without it. That particular scene anchors the rest of the movie, setting the tone so perfectly. Shot on a soundstage with the incomparable John Houseman, of Paper Chase fame, Houseman gave the movie gravitas right away, some depth that the rest of the movie could lean on. Also, Carpenter went back and added some gore, showing some kills that previously had only been insinuated by the fog rolling in. It's an odd case of telling not showing working, and also showing not telling working, if that makes any sense. After extensive reshoots and edits, The Fog, as we know it, was born. Carpenter obviously doesn't need an introduction here, but I'd still like to go through some other movies of his that deserve the same glow-up that The Fog has received. Everyone knows about The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York, and of course, Halloween. But where's the love for Christine, Starman, They Live, and In the Mouth of Madness? Carpenter has many more movies than this as well. One of my favorite quotes from Carpenter when it comes to horror is this: "There are two different stories in horror, internal and external. In external horror films, the evil comes from the outside, the other tribe. This thing in the darkness that we don't understand. Internal is the human heart." Carpenter got his start writing and directing a short film called Dark Star while attending the University of Southern California School of Cinema. Dark Star was later expanded into a feature film, and as they say, the rest is history. Something that always features in many of his films is social issues, which we'll get into later. Trigger alert. Another one that doesn't need much of an introduction, or an introduction at all, Oscar winner that she is Jamie Lee Curtis. Reflecting on The Fog, Curtis had this to say recently on Instagram. "Walking in the fog last night reminded me that I was in the movie The Fog, and that John Carpenter and Deborah Hill wrote the part for me after the movie Halloween had come out, and I couldn't get any work except for a guest shot on Charlie's Angels and The Love Boat. Feeling grateful at this very moment for their belief in me, as from then on, I have consistently found satisfying and exciting creative work, which is one of the great privileges for a performer." Having been around for the length of Curtis's career, it's been fun watching her jump from genre to genre effortlessly. From True Lies, to Terror Train, to A Fish Called Wanda, to Everything Everywhere All at Once. Jamie Lee Curtis is a national treasure. There. I said it. It can't be unsaid. My introduction to Adrienne Barbeau was Swamp Thing, and Creepshow. I probably can't count how many times I've watched either of those. She, like I said earlier, is horror royalty, and needs no introduction either. She's worked with Carpenter, Romero, Craven, and Corman. Pretty remarkable for someone that's mentioned she's not a fan of horror, because she doesn't like being scared. We had so much fun making The Fog again, in part because we were one big family, cast and crew. Also, because we were in some of the most beautiful country in the States. You cannot be in those beautiful surroundings and not enjoy yourself. Plus, we had John as a director. I couldn't ask for anything more. At the time they were filming The Fog, Barbeau and Carpenter were a couple. Today, that might raise eyebrows, as the tide seems to have turned on nepotism casting. I'd argue her casting was brilliant. She practically carries the film alone, for long stretches, tucked away in her lighthouse, chatting on the radio. It's hard to imagine anyone else in this role. So for the record, I'm all for nepotism casting, as long as the actor can carry the role. Janet Leigh. Here we go again. Do we need an introduction here? Psycho, The Fog, and circling around to a non-Carpenter Carpenter film, Halloween H2O. Also, psst, she's Jamie Lee Curtis's mother. Don't know where this falls when it comes to nepotism. Also, I'll stop saying nepotism. You're welcome. Such a brilliant casting decision. Lee's career spanned TV and movies. She was an author and a dancer. which isn't surprising as she comes from the generation that defined success as being a triple and quadruple threat. When Lee was 22, she went on contract with MGM, and she never looked back. Starring in over 50 movies and multiple television shows, Janet Leigh and her legacy still resonates today. Sticking to the royalty theme, we come to Tom Atkins. Atkins would work with Carpenter again in a couple more movies, Escape from New York and also Halloween 3, which Carpenter produced. He'd also go on to work with Romero in Creepshow, Two Evil Eyes, and Bruiser. Atkins was prolific on stage before he moved to movies, even starring alongside Old Blue Eyes himself, Frank Sinatra, in 1968's The Detective. Growing up a blue-collar kid from Pennsylvania, he would go on to pretty much keep playing that character. As he's mentioned, he's played a doctor a couple of times, but overall, he's always the blue-collar guy that gets the girl. Though, as he's told it, he doesn't always get the girl in real life. He doesn't know why his characters always do. Yeah, where the hell did that come from? I never get the girl in real life, but in the movies, I was getting him right and left. Hal Holbrook. The role of Father Malone was originally offered to Christopher Lee. I'm only 3 episodes into this channel and Christopher has come up multiple times. Holbrook has one of those faces that you've seen 100 times. Literally. He has over 130 acting credits on IMDb. For me, I think Creepshow was my introduction. He has an earlier horror thriller that I definitely want to check out, Rituals, from 1977. If you need specifics, that's okay, I've got you. He was in The Kidnapping of the President, All the President's Men, George Washington, Lincoln, I'm seeing a pattern. He also showed up in The Firm and Into the Wild. But also television shows like Designing Women and Sons of Anarchy. A career to be jealous of, absolutely. This is another one of those films where the location becomes a character. Bodega Bay and Point Reyes Station stand in for the fictional town of Antonio Bay. Anyone that's been to Northern California can attest for its coastline and scenery.
Different story.
Carpenter has been on record many times about his love for Hitchcock films. There are nods in Halloween, for example. Meet Dr. Loomis and Sam Loomis. Here in The Fog, we have a lot of the Birds correlations, besides the Bodega Bay reference earlier. From clothing worn to the way scenes were set up, there are plenty of Easter eggs to look out for. It's quite interesting. I'm going to drop a link in the notes for a website called Kindertrauma that really dives into this. As always, let's get into the themes. I always see a lot of discourse from horror fans that modern horror is too woke, or too heavy-handed with its messaging. It's 1980, and Carpenter is unleashing generational guilt on you in a not-so-subtle way. A movie about ghosts exacting revenge upon a group of people isn't new to the genre. That's basically just about any ghost story. Carpenter never shied away from politics in his films. If this conversation about people being the benefit of previous generations' atrocities but are innocent themselves, in that they didn't commit the atrocities but have only benefited from them, sounds familiar, well then you've been watching the news, and have been keeping up with the times. If somehow you've missed out on this conversation, I'd say it's time to watch The Fog again. I mean, it's always time to watch The Fog again. I've even seen comparisons between the events of The Fog and US Thanksgiving. Celebrations that, at their root, aren't nearly as glorious and celebratory as we've all been taught as children. Sins of the past seems to be an ongoing theme in ghost stories. Ghosts are always unhappy about something. That something is usually how they've been treated. Spurned lovers, financial deals broken, familial trauma. This isn't different. We find that the 6 founders of Antonio Bay deliberately wrecked a ship so a leper colony wouldn't be established nearby. Then they used the money from the victims to found the town. The lesson to be found here is that hiding from your past isn't the solution. Trying to tuck history away so others will never find it is a losing game. Eventually, those secrets will come out, and, as in the movie, they tend to roll over everything in their path when they do. The truth is, John Carpenter was socially conscious before being woke was a thing. Just about any of his films have deeper stories being told. Don't believe me? Check out They Live, or Christine, or The Thing, or I could go on. But on that note, I'll get out of here before I see all the thumbs down reactions, and let you get to watching more movies. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk. Next week, we're going to talk about Cellar Dweller from the late 80s. A movie that I hadn't seen before, but I just watched last night, and I kinda liked it. Hope to see you there.